Live. The content of this meeting is being sent. Hold on.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, being sent by a third party.
Okay, we're going live here. All right, so everybody, we have a very special guest here today. Oh, hold on. And I apologize for that. We had a little bit of interference there, but we'll start over again. We have a very special guest. I've known her for a little while now. This is Leslie Corbly. It's lesliecorbly.com, Corbly.com. The book is Silent Suffering, Poems of Pain and Purpose. We're going to be talking about the election 2024, 2 days out from that election right now. I should say from 2 days in the past. I guess we could say 2 days out, but regardless of that, Leslie knows everything backwards and forwards. She's done all kinds of political talks, she's been on many political stations, but I'm going to shut up and get into the conversation with Leslie. But first, before we start, thanks so much for always being good to us here on the program and coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to come on.
So let's talk about this. So we were talking about this before we started, Leslie, and it was really incredible of what happened. The landslide of Donald J. Trump, 312 electoral votes to 226. Not only did that happen, we saw the Republicans take the Senate, win Pennsylvania in the Senate, was very close on Michigan. There are some two states that are outstanding right now as far as Senate races going with Nevada and Arizona, which the Republicans could pick that up. So hypothetically, the Republicans could pick up anywhere from 55 to 56 seats right now. And then the House is still up for grabs, but it looks like a Republican majority is coming that way. I want to ask you this because I was down in Florida voting down there. I saw a lot of Harris signs, but I also saw a lot of Trump flags and signs as well. The area that I was in is a very liberal area. This is the first time ever that a Republican won this county. It's called Osceola County. Look it up. A very Hispanic county. Actually, it's minority majority county with many Puerto Ricans there as far as Hispanics going. And Donald J. Trump won the county 50 to 48. Every governor's race goes to the Democrats here, Leslie. Every presidential race goes to the Democrats here. And then finally, Donald J. Trump wins this county by 2 percentage points. And then he wins the state of Florida by 13 points. Incredible. We all know that the state of Florida is usually a 1 point race. I know Donald J. Trump won the first time, 1 point, second time, 3 points. Now we're up to 13, along with obviously Ron DeSantis winning in 2022 by 19. What is going on with the Republican Party? And we know that this is Trump's party. But besides that, what the heck went on in 2024? It's incredible.
I think it's kind of what I mean. I think I talked about this last time I was on with you that the Republican Party is now the big tent party. I mean, the Democrats are no longer the big tent party. They're kind of, I think, perceived as a party of the elites. They have a narrower focus because of the degree to which they've embraced identity politics and certain
Yeah.
really progressive, hard left stances on various issues. So they really are the smaller tent party that focuses a lot on purity of beliefs. Like, what do you really align with their beliefs 100% or not? And the Republican Party is the big tent. I mean, you could kind of see that at the convention as well, right? You think about the individuals who spoke at the Republican convention and how, I mean, I remember the Republican Party of my youth. No way would you have gotten some of those people to stand on the at the RNC and give a speech, right?
Well,
I
even
mean,
the
so it's really
Teamsters
changed.
president, just to interject quickly, the Teamsters president was there. And we know the Republican Party in the past hated unions. There would be no union representation in that Republican convention. Teamsters president was there. He was getting applause, by many people throughout the convention. We've seen people like Dana White, Kid Rock. It was really incredible, of these people at the convention. And then it seemed like this, and I want you to get your opinion on this, that it was almost like we've seen people like Joe Rogan, Elon Musk,
Mm.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. It's like a team of rivals that Donald J. Trump put together. We've all heard of the book or maybe read the book, Doris Kearns' book, Goodwin, rather. Is that her name? Doris Kearns Goodwin? I think
I
that's
think
her
so.
name. Yeah, regardless, uh, she's the historian there for people that know. She wrote that Lincoln book, The Team of Rivals. And we all know that Abraham Lincoln brought those team of rivals together, Leslie. And Donald J. Trump is doing that. He's bringing Democrats together, he's bringing Republicans together. And it's all about making America great again and in the America First agenda.
Yeah, he's brought a lot of people into the fold, and I think that, frankly, again, has more honestly to do with where the left and the Democratic Party has gone than an affirmation of who Trump is as a person. You saw that in RFK's speech where he endorsed Trump. He seemed to be saying essentially, we have a seat at the table here. We can try to influence government if Trump is in office. So it has seemed to elevate over the past 4 years with people viewing this election, regardless of where they stand on the political aisle, as a as pretty existential. And I think a lot of people that ended up supporting Trump were able to come to his side, not so much because they think he's some amazing guy, but because of policy and the likelihood that there's some ability to move forward under his administration in a way that at the very least they perceive that's impossible if the Democrats had power. So I think that it seemed like a retribution against the Democrats. That's what the takeaway I take from the
Well,
24 election is I don't think it was as much an affirmation of Trump as a complete and utter repudiation of what's coming out of the
right.
Democrats and the left side of the aisle. I don't think America wants that, clearly.
Well, just to put the icing on the cake, Leslie, we saw the Kamala Harris rallies, celebrities from Oprah to J Lo to John Legend to Lady Gaga to Beyonce. The list goes on and on. People in America don't really care about that. Maybe we listen to their musics, but we don't really care about all this nonsense. People telling us who to vote for, who to vote against. So there was that. And then there was also anybody that's a liberal. And for me, people know this. I used to be very far to the left, used to be a Bernie Sanders guy, still like Bernie, but I lost a lot of respect for him. Regardless of that, the left has been calling people like me that are not far away from a lot of their stances. If they just maybe included us, I consider myself an RFK Jr.
Hmm.
guy. I would have voted for him, but I voted for Trump instead because, again, you talked about the alignment. But the left calls people like me racist, sexist, anti Semitic, a fascist, insurrectionist. If you like Trump, you're garbage. We heard Joe Biden say this. I mean, this is the deplorables all over again from 2016 with Hillary Clinton, that these people think they're better than you because they either have more money than you or they have more education than you. The list goes on and on. And people are fed up, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Asian. We are tired of it. And we said, you know what? We're going to vote for the orange man because you know what? It's an FU to the liberal establishment and the elite around the country and around the world because this guy talks our language. He's a man's man and he's not afraid to tell it like it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things going on. One, you're absolutely right that the Democratic Party has become is now perceived, and I believe it's true, is the party of the powerful, right? So there's this dichotomy of the powerful and the people, and Trump is sort of representing whether I guess you agree with this or not, represents the people, and the Democrats represent the party of the powerful, right? We have the celebrities on our side, we have the institutions, the universities, the media, at least legacy media. But then that leads into the second thing that's going on, which is that the media landscape is fundamentally changing. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out because there's at least an argument to be made that Trump's appearance on Joe Rogan may have influenced some people's votes. Now, did it swing the election? That's certainly not what I'm arguing, but it's something that I think people will think about more in the future. Politicians might think more about what podcasts they should appear on. Kamala Harris could have gone on Rogan's podcast. He would have had her. So it was really up to her whether or not to speak to his enormous audience, and she chose not to. But I think the wisdom of that choice might people might question that down the road because the media landscape is no longer just legacy media. So the
Right.
to the extent that there was this massive propaganda campaign to elect Harris, which I think is pretty clear that there was, it didn't work. Right? The attempts to bolster her campaign and to give her a lot of good press utterly failed.
Well, Leslie even just spoke about Kamala Harris going to Joe Rogan's podcast. Donald J. Trump was in Texas, went to Joe Rogan's studio, and did the podcast there. Joe Rogan, as you just stated, offered that platform to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris said, "No, we're only going to do it for an hour. It's my rules. It's his show. Who the hell is she to make the rules?" And not even just that, she said Joe Rogan has to come to her. I mean, what is she, the queen? I mean, give me a break. And Donald Trump came to him. He's got the class there. She thinks she's running the world right now. Maybe she is, because no one knows what the heck's going on in that White House. Is it Biden? Is it her? Is it the deep state running it right now? No one knows it. Let's even go into that right now. Who the hell is running the country right now? Because we know Joe Biden is half in the bag,
Yeah.
half of the time, maybe all the time for that matter. Kamala Harris is going to go on a little vacation now because she just had 120 some odd days of campaigning for a job she didn't get and the people didn't want her to have. So who is running the country right now, Leslie, in your opinion?
I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure it's I guess technically Joe Biden, that's I suppose, the answer. But we all, again, the degree to which he's functional and capable of fully executing the duties of his office is not at all clear. So I don't know. My hope is that the transition will go smoothly now with, President-elect Trump. It's funny. I never really a huge Trump person myself, but um, especially not in 2016 when he first came on the scene. But it's wild to think that that's almost, the better part of a decade ago when he initially came on. So it's kind of my views on him have sort of morphed, and I'm kind of in a weird, murky middle where I'm kind of just observing what he does and how he behaves, particularly after this campaign. There's just been a lot of really impactful things that have happened. The multiple assassination attempts, the fact that all these tactics, attempts to prevent him from running didn't work. So I think whether people agree with him or not, or like him or not as a person, it's going to be interesting to sort of watch as history unfolds, since that's what's really going on. But I'm hoping that there's a good transition of between administrations because, yeah, I don't think it's at all clear exactly who's making really important, critical decisions for the country right now. Again, it's Joe Biden, I suppose, but I don't know what that means functionally, given what appears to be his limitations.
Well, they juice him up every now and then. He did make a good speech the other day. He did go into the Rose Garden, made a little speech about the election. It was very good. I will give him credit for that. He does make a good speech every now and then, reading off that teleprompter. But I'll tell you what, just to put the exclamation point on that part of the question, it's just really sad that the country's come to this, that we have someone that's not fully functional in the White House leading it consistently. We have a bubbling idiot besides that, that doesn't know what the hell's going on. We just saw that in the past 120 some odd days in her run for the White House. And it's just really sad because, Megyn Kelly brought this up, and I know you know who that is. I listen to her
Hmm.
constantly. And she said, what happened if Kamala Harris did win the election and did get into the White House when we have another bubbling idiot into the White House and we talk about women in leadership positions? Everybody's going to say when she fails at the job, but this is why we don't want women in big positions, because they're going to fail upward. And that was what Kamala Harris basically did, is she failed upward. Willie Brown. We don't have to go deep into all this. This is old news, but it's what's true is true. What happened with Willie Brown failing upward into the district attorney, then obviously to the attorney general, then U.S. Senate, and then obviously a vice president. She failed upward throughout her whole life. So with that said, that really, I think, would have hurt woman if she won this race. Do you agree with me, or maybe I'm thinking too much
I
into this?
no, I definitely agree. I certainly, as a woman, wanted nothing to do with her being the standard bearer for my gender, that didn't make me feel great about. Yeah, I wouldn't want that. But aside from that, I think really with this election, when the rubber meets the road, it was good to see Trump win. Again, I didn't vote for him. He's not like someone I am like admire or esteem in a certain way. But on the other hand, the reason I say it's good is because I think it shows that that reality won out. You know, the propaganda wasn't effective, and reality in the sense of Harris, for example, I think one of the things she struggled with so much during the campaign was being able to actually articulate what she thought. Because the reality is, you have a California Democrat who, while she was in the Senate, was one of the most liberal members of the US Senate.
Right.
So of course she can't articulate what she thinks to the public because in order for her to win, she can't tell anyone what she thinks because it's too far to the left. Right? So I mean, you don't want that for your country, right? You don't want someone sort of campaigning on platitudes and not really able to speak to their own beliefs about what they want to see happen with the country when they govern and then end up winning at the White House and it's going to be a mess from there on out. So I think it's much better for the country that Trump won over Harris.
Mhm.
But again, I live in Utah, so I guess I didn't have to make the hard decision of who to vote for because all the electoral votes that are in my state were going to go right to Trump, regardless of my lone vote. However, I think it's a good news that the kind of mass sort of propaganda efforts that were unleashed failed. I think that's a good thing.
Well, it's funny now because we don't hear as much from the left about them getting rid of the electoral college and keeping the popular vote when since Donald J. Trump just won the popular vote by anywhere from 3 million to 5 million votes. Obviously, there's votes still coming in. So we know it's anywhere from 3 to 5 million. Again, for people listening, Leslie Corbly here on Fire Breathing Rob. It is lesliecorbly.com, Corbly.com. The book is Silent Suffering, Poems of Pain and Purpose. We're talking about the election here that just happened 2 days back. As we continue on with the last few questions, Leslie, I want to ask you as a woman, there was a lot of talk from, the pundits in the media that Kamala Harris was going to really get that woman vote. We obviously talked about this a little bit earlier off here about the abortion and how the abortion was going to motivate all these young women to go out there because their rights were getting taken away and the man was going to get them and they couldn't stand for it. And we did see a lot of women vote for Harris, but it wasn't enough and it wasn't as much as was pushed out by the
Yeah.
polls. Why do you feel like that is? Do you feel like the women were just upset with, other issues such as immigration, economy, the list goes on and on?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, there's only so much Harris can do as president to push the abortion issue. So I think
Right.
a lot of women are aware of this, right? It's one issue they may care about among many. So there's a bunch of other issues that could be either more important or equally important. And then the second is there was just a ridiculous amount of propaganda from the left regarding abortion, particularly. So, for example, the attempt to conflate miscarriage with abortion was on the table. The attempt to pretend as if frankly, the pro life, even if you disagree with them, that the pro life laws in some states don't allow for exceptions for life of the mother, which isn't true. And then a lot of propaganda surrounding what happened when Roe v. Wade was overturned. So, for example, the overturning of Roe and pushing it back to the states was presented as an extremist position, but that's actually not true. So there's plenty of people who are pro-choice who may think that the issue is best dealt with at the state level. So I think that there were always kind of capped on the number of people who were going to vote hard line on this one issue that frankly Harris can't really necessarily solve. I mean, she's not going to be able to get legislation, for example, through Congress on this issue. So it was a
Right.
lot of hyperbole, and I think that plays frankly to some maybe low information voters, people who aren't really paying a lot of attention but care a lot emotionally about the issue. That plays well to them. And then again, there's some hardline people who really care, but those people were likely going to vote for her anyway. So I never really understood her strategy of going fully in on this issue because it seemed like it was going to limit there's a hard limit on how many people are going to vote purely based on abortion.
Well, also we have to think of it in this way, as you kind of just stated a little bit, and I'll just even add a little bit more meat onto this. When we talk about the codifying of Roe versus Wade, there's no way she could do this because you need 60 votes. She
It's not
didn't
happening.
have the Senate. She didn't have the House. We're seeing this now. So there's no way she could do this. She would have been better off saying, you know, vote for Democratic governors, vote for Democratic state senators and people in the state house
Yeah.
in your state that are Democrats so they can put the law as far as into the states. And that's how you can get abortion to be fully 24 weeks or whatever the heck they want to do with that. That's how you do it. They're never going to get it through the federal government. And if they ever do that, that's opening up a whole can of worms if they use it as far as like going up to the Supreme Court or whatever it may be, because when the power switches and they do, or they even do it in reconciliation, if they do it that way and they do that filibuster reform again, the Republicans get into power, they're going to do all kinds of stuff
I don't
that the
think it
Democrats are not going to
I
like.
don't think it was the
But
most sympathetic way to go either, because she was unable, for example, in the debate to even articulate a single limit on when someone should be able to have an
right,
abortion. And that's not where the public is. Now, the public is
no,
broadly speaking pro-choice in the sense they think abortion should be legal. But if you look further into the data at time limits and whatnot, most people in the public think there should be some restrictions. They're not nearly as far to the left on this issue as the average Democrat, or certainly not the average Democrat who's speaking on behalf of their party. So it just seemed like a really, frankly, though, one of the reasons I think she hammered abortion so hard is because that's one of the only issues on which she could competently speak that she had public support. Think about
well,
pretty much any other issue she could talk about. She can't talk about her immigration because she's part of an administration where that's gone terribly for them. She couldn't talk about the economy. There were a lot of things she really couldn't talk about, but she could talk about abortion and probably expect to at least get some broad public consensus on that. But I don't think there were many other issues. I certainly can't think of another major issue she could speak on that she either had an accomplishment to talk about or a position that aligned with the public.
Well, I listened to a couple of Kamala Harris speeches, especially at the end of the campaign, and I'm going to listen to a couple more just because I didn't listen to it at the time, but I like to learn and hear stuff in general. I'm an election junkie and I'm a geek in that aspect. So I'll go back and listen to this. But the ones that I did hear, she's up there for 10 minutes talking about joy or Trump is a fascist or the insurrection of January 6th. She's out there with Liz Cheney talking about that. This is the word salad, the gobbledygook nonsense that is not really on the people that are hurting in this country's minds. They're worried about the inflation, the immigration,
Yeah.
gasoline prices. The list goes on and on. They're not worried about January 6th or joy or men and not the woman and the trans woman thing and all that crap. They want the kitchen table issues. Kamala Harris was coming out and she was just doing this word salad for 10 minutes about nonsense. I couldn't even really tell you what she was saying.
Well, because she
And
couldn't talk about policy, right? That's like what you're
yeah,
saying is the exact issue. All she had to talk about were platitudes, right? I care about joy, I care about compassion. So this, like I guess maybe you could call it running on vibes, where she wanted to be
right.
perceived as more likable or the better, more moral candidate. So she could talk about those issues. She could bash Trump. But even on the trans issue, what is she going to say? Her position doesn't really align with where the public is at
Right.
on that either. And so she didn't have a lot of policy issues I didn't think that she could present to the public and expect to build a coalition or broad support for her policy positions. They're just not popular.
We'll end on this question on this. You look back at the 90s Democrats, it's like a whole different party from
Mm-hmm.
this kind of Democrat party of 2024. A lot of those 90s Democrats, they were pro-life. There
Yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
pro-choice guys and girls in there too, but there was a lot of people that were pro-life. And they did have the exceptions of rape, incest, life of the mother in there. It wasn't just a free for all. There's all this
Yeah.
sexual liberation talk now, the trans agenda that's being pushed on the kids, again, the men and women sports. And I think people are just like, listen, we're fed up with this.
Yeah.
We let things slide. a little bit, and then they just took the whole length of the field. And we're not going to let it go anymore. And this is it. And Trump is the stopgap in this. And that's what people felt. They said it's too much, and we're going to put the stopgap in here with Trump. We'll give him a Senate, we'll give him the House, and we'll see what he does. And then if they don't do anything, then they'll probably have a Democratic Senate or House again. And that's what's going to happen. I hope that's not the case. I do hope Donald Trump puts in the people like RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Elon Musk, and puts those people in there to really, do a deep dive into the government and get rid of all these silly jobs that they got, and make our country healthy again, and go dive into the food, the vaccines, the list goes on, because we need that in this country. And if he does that, like he said he will, would do, then he'll be rewarded. If not, he's just going to get shellacked in 2026.
Yeah, I think the left needs to come to terms with it that in a lot of ways they won the culture war, right? When you think about the Republican Party removed, I think it was gay marriage and abortion from their platform this time
Yeah.
around with Trump at the helm. And so a lot of the issues that they really push hard for that they're really fearful of. I mean, you see online hysteria over abortion, for example, and oh my goodness, if I miscarry, it's illegal in my state. It's a really bizarre take unless you're in a very strange mindset or like silo of the internet. Because if you look at Europe, for example, they have I have plenty of like limits on trimester limits and whatnot, week limits on abortion, and there's no one over there saying, "Oh my God, am I having an abortion or a miscarriage?" It's generally actually fairly easy to tell which is which. So this sort of seems to only be an issue in the really aggressively pro-choice culture of America. Frankly, I don't think it exists elsewhere that I'm aware of in the world. I think pretty much everywhere else can very readily distinguish um, even on lay people between an abortion and a miscarriage. So that it comes from this fear-based propaganda that's being put out from the left, but I don't think that fear-based messaging A is going to work anymore, and B, I think they're going to have to pivot in order to win, because I don't think that people are going to vote in the way that they want them to based on this really narrow set of issues that the public doesn't care them. I frankly think the public is past voting based on sex issues. I don't think very many people care about that right now. I don't think it's at the top of their mind. And there's a million other issues that are of much more importance than, you know, gay
Right.
marriage and abortion. That's just kind of not the talk of the town anymore.
I mean, we have the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
We have to worry about that. Russia, Ukraine. Trump says he's going to talk to Putin. Putin says that he's going to withdraw these troops. Kim Jong Il, they have that relationship. That's obviously involved with Russia and Ukraine right now, with the troops in North Korea are involved in that Russian Ukraine issue now. So again, Trump had relationships with these people. I know the left hated this, that
Yeah.
Trump talked to Putin, and he's a Russian agent, and all that dossier and all this BS. I want my president to be friendly with another nuclear power and come to terms, whether it's trade, whether it's just relations in general. I want Trump to talk to Putin. I want Trump to talk to Kim Jong Il. I want Trump to talk to Bibi Netanyahu. These are people that I want Trump to be around to keep the peace in this country. Listen, I personally believe another 4 years of a Biden Harris or Harris Waltz, that's World War III. I'm grateful that Trump Vance got in there, because I really truly believe there could have been a World War III issue. These people are bubbling idiots. This is not for applause lines. This is not for giggling lines. This is factual information. It's very scary on the world stage right now. And you need somebody in that White House that people are scared of. And people are scared of Donald J. Trump because they don't know what he's going to do. They can't predict him. You think he's going to do one thing, and he goes and does the other thing. That's what I want my president to be. Whether it's Donald J. Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whatever it may be, I want my president to be feared on the world stage, not to be buddy with Emmanuel Macron, or whoever the hell else is out there in England now. They went through about 7 prime ministers in the
I
past
know.
10
Who
years.
even is it at this point? I can't keep up with
Uh,
the names.
Yeah, and they're letting everybody into their country. I mean, it's a joke over there. They, it's
But
like
think also about free speech issues. I think people really were
right.
concerned about, things like that as well. And the
What they
left
did
isn't
during
strong on
COVID
that
on
issue anymore.
Twitter, on
Yeah,
YouTube, they were doing this. I was censored tons of times by
yeah,
talking about COVID and the jab on YouTube. They just shut it down. And these were legitimate doctors. Dr. Peter McCullough, he's testified in front of the U.S.
yep.
Senate
Mm-hmm.
multiple times. I interviewed him, Dr. Robert Malone, big in the mRNA technology. These are mainstream doctors, but since they had a different outlook or they had an issue with the jab and they saw and were helping people that had issues with the jab, with the adverse reactions,
Yep.
they were censored. And if you interviewed them, you were censored. So you know what? I agree with you. People were fed up with that nonsense too, and they're sick of the mainstream media lying about everything in the kitchen sink. And Donald J. Trump is Satan, and we're tired of this.
Well,
You
they were going to
cannot
go
like
after
Trump.
Elon Musk if Trump had lost. I mean, so there's a
Yeah,
lot of, issues here. I mean, imagine if Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter, what would the election news discourse have
yeah,
looked like, right? So I think keeping informational ecosystems diverse matters more to people right now. And I think people are just tired of being fed the same old narrative. And I agree with Elon Musk where he said, I think he posted on Twitter that you are the media now. The media landscape has completely changed, and I don't think it's going to return anytime soon to what it once was. So I think the influence of the mainstream media is dying in a way, and it is going to be very interesting to see what emerges in its place because social media was pretty much there was a stranglehold of control from the far left before
yeah.
Elon Musk took over Twitter, right? But now that's kind of gone for the foreseeable
Right,
future. And I think that's, by the way, a good thing, right? You want
right.
diversity in your media outlets. You don't want them all to be pushing the same thing. And so I think people care a lot about that issue right now. I think they're concerned about being able to access information, making their own decisions, and being able to speak freely. I mean, that's kind of there's been many problems in the UK, for example. Tons of stories coming out of various attempts to regulate speech that would obviously violate First Amendment in the U.S. So I think people
Mhm.
care a lot about being able about maintaining like that type of freedom as well. So the pushing that of social issues, for instance, that focus so heavily on abortion from the Democratic Party, I just don't think that's on most people's minds, and I think that there's a pretty hard cap on the number of people who are going to vote according to that logic. Most people, I think, have much more diverse range of things that they're concerned about.
Well, just to put the exclamation point on this point, I'll tell you what, 2024 just seemed a hell of a lot like 2016. The coronation, they threw Biden out, the coronation around Kamala Harris, the celebrities, what that's the same thing they did with Hillary, they did it with Kamala. They brought up again when Trump won, it was racist, the sexist, anti-Semitic, everything in the kitchen sink, every ism. If you voted for Trump or like Trump, that's what you are. The garbage comment to the deplorables comment in 2016.
Did
It
you
was
see them?
very much like a repeat,
And they even went after like I think they were going after African American and Latino men on one of the major
right?
networks saying like, oh, they have a misogyny problem. And I'm like, okay, did you learn nothing about why you lost? I think people are very tired of that
Well,
line of
these were the
attack.
same people that, and we could put the Latino and African American men in the same aspect of 2016 with
Yeah.
the Bernie Sanders voters that sat out in Michigan, in Wisconsin. We can do this. So it's almost like a mix and
Yeah.
match of 2016 to 2024. The similarities were there, and the differences were almost nil to none.
Well, and I
And
think
that's,
Trump got a lot of key endorsements. He got people who there are a lot of people who respected Tulsi Gabbard and
yeah,
RFK Jr. and people who otherwise, again, they're not necessarily saying Trump's the most amazing inspirational figure in history, but they are voting for him out of different motives. And I think they brought along a lot of their audiences and made them more open to the idea of voting for Trump. Think Joe Rogan, he was by no means a Trump guy in
He's a
2016.
Bernie guy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of people who had different motives this time around for how they voted. And he obviously didn't lose his base. He has a large base. He has a very specific type of voter that is his base voter, but he was able to add on a lot of other voters who otherwise wouldn't have cared about showing up to the polls for him. And that's why I say he's in my opinion, the big tent ticket candidate. He has a much bigger tent than the Democratic Party right now.
I'm sure you remember the statement before we move to the last question. Democrat. Jeez, I'm struggling, fumbling with words.
You're good.
Uh, but the demographics of destiny, and the Democrats were all about the Hispanic vote and the black vote, and it's going to make sure that after Barack Obama won in these huge margins of 365 electoral votes back in 2008 against John McCain, those destinies are gone now because a lot of those people are voting
Yeah.
for the Republicans and Donald Trump now. So the Democrats, what they wished for is gone now. So you got to be careful what you wish for. And they have a lot of problems there. And I don't really see right now, besides maybe Josh Shapiro, uh, a guy that can really win a national election. Besides
Yeah.
him, Gretchen Whitmer can't. I mean, she was doing
No.
some really funky stuff with the woman. I don't know if you saw that with the Catholic thing.
Yeah,
She
I
was,
saw a lot of Catholics were offended, and she said that's not how she meant it. Personally, when I saw it, I thought it was weird, no matter if it was aimed at Catholics or not. It was just a
yeah. I mean,
bizarre
they
situation.
just do really strange, weird stuff, and it always kind of seems like it's sexualized, and it's just strange. I'm just saying.
I agree with
I
that.
listen. I don't see any Republican men or women doing these weird, funky things on social media that could come out as offensive to a nationality or religion, or come out offensive to a man or a woman. It's just really weird what's going on. But let's finish off with this last question. What do you expect from a Trump administration? It's only 4 years. And if we're really thinking realistically, it's only really two,
Yeah.
because then the midterms come and you're kind of on the back burner, especially if he can't run again. And there's going to be J.D. Vance probably gearing up. I'm sure Ron DeSantis, Glenn Youngkin, there's other people that are going to be gearing up to run for that nomination in 2028. So, maybe it's not even two. Maybe it's only like 1 year because they're going to be gearing up for the
Hmm.
midterms after that. So what are you expecting? Are you expecting big things, minor things? What are you
I think
thinking?
it's going to matter a lot who he appoints to different agencies. I think that's going to be what's really interesting to watch. RFK Jr. at HHS could make a lot of
Oh,
inroads, and I
that's
think
a
a lot of
dream.
things. My guess is the most dramatic will be what he's able to make public that the public doesn't currently know. So he may lead to a lot more transparency in government, and not just in government now, but I mean historically as well. He may, I don't know, will he release, for instance, the Kennedy files? I think that will be interesting if he does. The
Yeah.
assassination of Kennedy files. Now that's of course fairly minor in the grand scheme of things of what affects us, but the way in which agencies behave really affects the public. The way that they regulate various industries. So I think it'll be really interesting to see who he appoints to various very important agencies and how they shape the actual executive branch, because that will last for 4 years. Whereas you're right, he won't may or may not have Congress for his full 4 year term. He will have control of the executive agencies for that time, and that will
Yeah.
have a profound impact on governance, because so much happens right now at the agency level.
Well, I expect the executive orders to go right out quick. Men and out of women's sports, I expect that to go right out the door right at the beginning.
Yeah,
I expect the immigration with the deportations, hopefully, God willing, that starts
that in
right
particular
away.
will be huge. How they implement the deportation plans will be have a massive effect on
And
the
we know the
country.
liberals are going to be going screaming for
Yeah.
bloody murder and going crazy. But We need that to be done. And then hopefully, as you stated, if you put RFK Jr. in any kind of health aspect, but hopefully, God willing, that is a dream to put him in HHS because that would really do some huge things. I worry about the Senate confirmation. We see a lot of these senators
Yeah.
with the being bought off by big pharma. I do worry about him getting confirmed. I think it is easier with that Republican Senate, but I do know,
Yeah.
as you do, that Republicans do take the big pharma money as well as Democrats do as
And
well.
just quickly on that deportation, when you talk about the deportation plan that Trump has, I want to say he came out either today or yesterday saying he doesn't have a price tag for that. This has to happen. He's committed to it happening. And at this point, he
Good.
doesn't have to worry about reelection, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that there's gonna be a lot of changes coming on the immigration front where he has a lot of power over that because the executive, he runs the executive, and that's mostly a executive function. So it's gonna be really
Good.
interesting to see what shakes out. And my hope is that it will lead to good reforms. And I don't know. I mean, we'll just have to kind of wait and see what comes about. But it'll
Look at
be interesting to watch.
regardless, it needs to happen. We have women getting raped. We have women dying. We have men and women dying from fentanyl. We have children dying from fentanyl. This needs to get done ASAP. It needs to, be a wrap and be over. And then you can move on to hopefully getting the economy back in order with the drill baby drill. I think people are ready for this, and people, Trump, if he really produces, he could be one of the greatest presidents because of the economic, greatness that was in the first term, and then you go into the second term and do even bigger and better things. This is a thing that could really happen for Donald Trump, and it really could put him in, top 10 presidency of all time. I don't want to put him in the top 5 yet. And it is wishful thinking right now to put him in the top 10, Leslie. But we can hope and dream. And listen, if he puts RFK Jr. in HHS, as I said for the third time now, that's a dream. That would be amazing. As a person that got injured from the jab, it would be a huge dream for some accountability on what happened in 2020, what happened with the jabs, and hopefully to really get that schedule of jabs down from 70 some odd jabs,
It's a lot
uh,
now.
down to, maybe zero, but and even if it's not zero, down to a very small amount.
Well, it's certainly be interesting to watch, and just with how long he's been able to stay relevant in politics,
Right.
in comparison to what's been thrown at him, is going to be, I think, something everyone should study in the future because he's very uncommon, right? I mean, it's historic in the true sense of the word, regardless of what one's opinion of Trump is. That he was able to pull off this political feat is very
Yeah.
challenging and very difficult. I don't think most people would have expected that to happen. I certainly, personally, 2 3 years ago, wouldn't have expected Trump to be able to win again, win
Listen,
the
if we want
presidency
to
again.
really
So,
be honest, though, Leslie, if there was no COVID-19 in 2020, he probably would have got reelected
yeah,
easy. Because
yeah.
if we go back to late 2019 and we think of the election his approval rating was very high. The economy was great. The economy only tanked right when,
Hmm.
obviously COVID-19 hit, then the lockdowns and all that stuff happened. But before that, he was, rolling into reelection,
Well, there
and
was
no
also
one
a
even had
big
a shot.
schism that happened in COVID based on how people responded. I think that a lot of people's opinions about various things in politics
Right.
changed because of COVID. So I think that there
I
was a
do.
huge coalition change based on COVID that didn't necessarily happen until after 2020 was over, right? So people's
Yes.
opinions on COVID, for example, I talked to a lot of people whose opinions on COVID in, let's say, July, August, even December of 2020 were very different than a year later,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you got further and further into the pandemic. So I think that changed a lot of people's perceptions of political figures, political parties, and how they wanted to vote. I just think it was a huge change over that time period, but it didn't end in November when votes would have been cast, right? That was something that was ongoing for some time. And as we got deeper into the pandemic, people's opinions may have been more in flux. So I think that he was able to in some ways, again, miraculously. I don't know how he was able to do this, but to come back after that defeat and after what happened on January 6th, that's really stunning
Yes.
in a way. It's not expected.
Leslie Corbly, lesliecorbly.com. I do hope people, again, go and look at the book, buy the book, Silent Suffering, Poems of Pain and Purpose. Definitely check it out. Anything else you want to tease before we call it quits here today, Leslie?
I don't think so. Just go check out the book. I do keep writing though. So sign up
Okay.
for the newsletter. That's signing up for a Substack. I take all of those emails and put them into Substack where I
Okay.
write. And then I will have more book length projects underway. So definitely check out the website where I keep everything up to date and look for more content coming soon.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you about politics, every poems, everything in the kitchen sink. We will have you on again to talk more in depth about the book. But again,
Sure.
lesliecorbly.com. Definitely check her out. You can go on the website, sign up for the newsletter, and then you can also find her Substack. Again, it's Leslie Corbly on Substack, Corbly. Definitely check it out there. Leslie, thanks again.